Good evening, everyone. If you didn't read my message earlier, this is my second attempt at recording a video today on Isaias. My audio quality today was bad, to say the least, so hopefully this is a little bit better, but we're going to jump right into it to make up for lost time here. Isaias, as of 5 p.m., which is, I'm recording this at 5:07, so this is very fresh data, was a 75 mile per hour Category 1 hurricane, moving northwest at 15 miles per hour. Now, this is no different than earlier today, so you're not really missing out on much. It has slowed down slightly from about 16 to 15 miles per hour, and that seems like it's a trend. It's going to slow down as it turns slightly more to the north, heading towards Florida. Hurricane warnings are in effect for all of the Bahamas, Miami, up to Cape Canaveral as well. Those areas are likely to see hurricane conditions within the next 24 hours. Now, this does not mean that everywhere along there is going to see hurricane force conditions. It all depends on where this makes landfall, if it makes landfall. Hurricane watches are in effect from Cape Canaveral up to Flagler Beach and Flagler County. Uh, that means that hurricane conditions are possible within the next 36 hours. Now, north of there, for the rest of northeast Florida along the coast, a tropical storm watch is in effect, which means within the next 36 to 48 hours, we could be seeing tropical storm-like conditions here along the first coast. Now, this is all following a westward shift in the track that we've been seeing all day long. I know I didn't really cover it too much, but I did mention it in my post earlier. All day long, we've been seeing a westward track in the cone, in the models. If you remember correctly, yesterday, all the models in the cone were shifting back to the east. Now they're coming back to the west, which means more land interaction, which leads to a few different things that we'll talk about here in a second. So going over to the cone right now, you see Isaias is located over the Bahamas right now. You see all these places in red are under a hurricane warning. So you see up the Florida coast, you see just down to the south here, it's under a hurricane watch. Or should that would be a tropical storm warning there for areas south of Miami, Lake Okeechobee. You go up north, you see this area where the hurricane watch is in effect, and north of there, the tropical storm watch. So as you can see, the cone takes it, it's sort of the middle of the cone hits right over Cape Canaveral. Now, like I said, this is a trend that we've been seeing all day, and I will say, from what I've seen, both models, I won't show the models right now because they kind of show the same thing, so I can just kind of detail it myself here. Both models show a landfalling system somewhere around the Miami area. Now note, still a day and a half out, possibly a day out, right? So a lot of this can change. We're talking about Saturday, tomorrow night, we could be seeing a landfalling system around the Miami area. Now, what this does is it puts the worst of the effects now focused on central Florida, but also for our area, it will lessen but also increase our impacts, if that makes sense. What I mean by that is we will see more impacts in terms of rain, wind, and possibly tornadic threat and storm surge due to the storm being closer to us now. However, they won't be as strong as they would have been if it was a stronger system, in the same place, because by the time it gets to us, as you can see here, 2 a.m. Monday, it's expected to be a tropical storm. Now, that all depends on how much land interaction it has once it reaches Florida, right? If it stays off the coast, it very well could remain a hurricane. If it goes over land, it could be a weaker tropical storm, could be a high-end tropical storm. We don't know yet. The models aren't completely sure yet, and I'm sure there will be more change into tomorrow. And really, tomorrow is when we will get more clear on that bigger picture when it comes to this. Now, Isaias was named a hurricane late last night. It was an 80 mile per hour hurricane. It has since weakened to a 75 mile per hour hurricane. Why is this? Well, if you come back over to the satellite imagery, you would think the center of the hurricane, right? I'm sorry, the image is jumping around. It's just a satellite following the storm. Would be where this big massive cloud over here is, right? Somewhere in the middle. But that's not true. The center of the storm is over here. So as you can see, everything is skewed off to the north and to the east of the storm. Now, this is because of wind shear coming in from the southwest that has really been inhibiting the storm's development and even weakening it, although within the last few hours, it seems like the storm is battling back fairly well. It's sort of reorganized, and if I jump over to my favorite thing to look at, which is microwave imagery, what this does is it looks at the temperatures at the tops of the clouds to see where the most intense bands of wind and rain are. Earlier today, you had this red band that kind of faded, right? And the center of the hurricane is right here. Excuse me. And usually, what you want to see with a stronger system, what you don't want to see, I would say, is one of those yellow or red band in a complete circle around that center. And if you look earlier today, we didn't have that. We had these outer bands, but the center was relatively not great. But as you can see lately, those bands have been intensifying around the center, and we're starting to get a little bit of wraparound around that now. So that indicates to me that the storm is trying to re-intensify. It should re-intensify ever so slightly, possibly up to an 85 mile per hour Category 1 hurricane before it reaches Miami. Now, like I said, once it hits land, it should weaken back into a tropical storm. Depends on how much land it interacts with, right? Like I said, if it remains off the coast, it should stay a hurricane. If it goes way over the coast, like the center goes over Orlando, it could be a very weak tropical storm, even a tropical depression at that point, before it curves back out over the Atlantic and re-strengthens. Now, to that note, we're expecting Isaias. The models that I've seen have taken it off the Jacksonville coast by Monday morning. So about 8 a.m. Monday is when the GFS, I believe, had out. The Euro might have been a little bit quicker. I'm not entirely sure. But it takes it off the coast Monday morning and out of here. Now, by the time it gets north of us, our conditions should start to increase pretty drastically. They should go downhill pretty quickly, but they should also increase quickly as well. This storm is extremely skewed off to the north and to the east, and unless it gets better organized, the southern end is just not going to have a whole lot of weather associated with it. Now, to that point about the whole skewing off to the north and east, what that means is that if the storm goes farther over Florida, right, if it comes more of a track over central Florida, that puts us more in that northeastern quadrant here in Jacksonville. And what that does is it increases our storm surge, it increases our wind potential, and it also increases our tornadic potential. These northeastern quadrants of hurricanes, due to the way they spin, are just highly conducive to rotating thunderstorms that can produce quick spin-ups. A few years ago, we did have a rather large tornado that formed with Hurricane Michael that came out into the panhandle here, and of course we were in that northeastern quadrant, and a rather sizable tornado formed out by Keystone Heights and tracked north along the Clay County border. Now usually they aren't that large, but you can get a quick spin up of an EF0 or an EF1 tornado, which, don't get me wrong, these tornadoes will more than likely pack higher winds than the actual tropical system will, right? Winds of up to probably about 110 miles per hour you're looking at with those. So these quick spin-ups still aren't anything to joke around with. And even if we aren't in that northeastern quadrant, say it takes more of the central path or more of an eastern path, with any rotating tropical system, the atmosphere is right to have some sort of tornadic development, so that will never be zero as long as this moves through. Now, after it exits the Jacksonville area, Isaias is expected to accelerate off to the north and to the east, probably making landfall somewhere in North Carolina before continuing up the coast. I've seen further landfalls in Maryland, Delaware area, Jersey, and even tracking up into New York. Now, it'll probably be a tropical storm. It could re-intensify a little bit here depending on how long it stays over the open water. If it takes more of an eastern course here, it could re-intensify back into a hurricane, although I don't think that's overly likely at this point. But everyone on the eastern seaboard needs to be paying attention to this storm because there is the chance that everyone up and down the eastern seaboard could see some form of impacts from it. So, why is this storm taking a more western approach? Well, out here, you see this little island here, Bermuda, right? Well, what if I told you Bermuda plays a very large impact in where this is going to go? Because typically in the summer, what we have here in Bermuda, let me pull up my pen tool here real quick. Give me one moment, folks. So typically here over Bermuda, we have a high pressure system that sits right here. That is a terribly large font. Excuse me for a second, folks. We're going to make that smaller. We have a high pressure system. I know that blue is hard to see. I'm sorry. I'm just very used to writing high pressure in blue. But we have a very large high pressure system that spins clockwise, right? The winds are going this way and this way along it. And that's why you can see the storm is taking the path that it's taking, right? It's sort of curving along with those winds. Now, what the models are showing early on yesterday, the models showed that high being farther off to the east and weaker. What would that do? Well, that would allow for the storm to come. Let me change colors here real quick. To come, right, and turn sooner, staying farther offshore. However, that high pressure system in the later model runs is farther to the east and stronger, right? Even moves a little bit to the north. And what that does is it forces this tropical system farther to the west. Now that's why, and once you get, once the storm gets, equal and then north of it, the winds with this curvature here will start to bring the storm back out to sea. So that's really what's been steering this. Also, there is a upper level, a weak trough of low pressure that is coming down from the north that will also be carrying the storm off that way. Thus, its acceleration off to the northeast after it clears Jacksonville. Now, the big key is, when does this northeastern turn start? That is key to how far the storm gets over land and how strong it is by the time it gets to us. We don't know yet. That will be seen here within the next probably 24 hours. It'll probably start to make that turn, right? If it makes that turn right along the coast, it'll probably follow right through the cone. If it goes a little bit farther in the land, then makes a turn, we probably have a weaker system coming into Jacksonville. However, it will be closer to Jacksonville. So really, it's a sort of pick your poison kind of thing with this. I say that, but let me be very clear here. This is not something we have not seen before. We've gone through Irma, gone through Matthew, we've gone through Michael. This is going to be probably an easier time than any of them for the Jacksonville area. It's going to be more in line with your typical tropical storm type system. What does that mean? Well, that means you got to be prepared for tornadoes. You got to be prepared for some flooding, although the storm is moving quick enough that I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of flooding. I've seen 1 to 6 inches locally. I think most of the rainfall is going to be concentrated down South Florida. As you can see, the storm is going to slow down. Down here, you see how these circles are closer together down there, right? And then up here, they're farther apart. That's indicative of the storm speeding up. So wherever the storm is slower, you're going to get more rainfall falling. However, if the storm does come more inland, that's going to bring more rain over us. So really, all that's up in the air and very uncertain at this moment. So what can you do? Well, make sure you have water, non-perishable food, candles, batteries. There is a possibility that your power could go out, right? It's a tropical system. You're having sustained winds of 30 plus miles per hour. You have saturated grounds. Trees can can fall down, knock over power lines, take out your power, right? The other thing you can do is not panic. Like I said, this is not something we haven't seen before. You'll be able to ride it out. Everybody should be okay. There might be some minor coastal flooding, so if you live along the coast, get your sandbags, board up your houses if you need to, but this is not something that if you live, near downtown Jacksonville, Riverside, anywhere in, Clay County, most of St. Johns County, most of Duval County, unless you're right along the coast, you should be okay. I know Black Creek in Clay County is prone to flooding. Maybe there if you want to set up sandbags. I know they're very prone to flooding. Anytime we get any kind of tropical system, that would be a good idea. But again, like I said, don't panic. Just to run through real quick, again, what we're expecting in a bunch of major cities in Florida. Miami could experience hurricane force winds. They're probably going to get 4 to 10 inches of rain down there. The tornadic threat is probably, excuse me, about equal with ours. It depends on where the storm comes on shore. Actually, they could be a little bit higher in tornado threat than we are. Cape Canaveral will be seeing a lot of storm surge, like Miami. Not a lot of storm surge, but definitely some storm surge. And matter of fact, I'm going to take a look at that real quick. Okay, yeah, 2 to 4 feet up across most of the eastern Florida coast, 1 to 3 feet down by Miami. So that's not a huge amount of storm surge, folk, but it is enough to cause some coastal flooding, especially along A1A. It's an area that's prone to, washing over. So if you live along A1A, it's probably a good idea to board up your house, put sandbags down. Now, going back to the cone, for areas like Orlando, you're going to see your tropical storm force winds probably starting late Saturday night into early Sunday. Maybe even earlier Saturday, you could get some bands coming through that causes, some wind gust and wind damage, possible tornadic threat. But definitely Sunday, you will be in the square of that. Jacksonville, probably starting late Sunday, you'll start to maybe even, early Sunday, I'd say we might get a few bands coming through. And as it goes on, it's going to keep increasing. Conditions will continue to deteriorate. Winds will increase. I'm sure surge will increase slightly. And as it gets closer into Sunday, into Sunday night, that will be when our peak impacts will more than likely be before this storm exits early Monday morning. Like I said, once this system gets north of you, your conditions will probably rapidly increase unless it gets better organized. Like I said, throwing back over to here, it's not overly organized. Go to the microwave imagery. We're not seeing a complete eye forming yet. It's trying. Will it get there? We don't know quite yet. So everyone, just like I said, stay calm. We've been through this before. Everyone's been through this before. It's nothing to panic about. It's also nothing to sneeze about. So everyone, just pay attention to the news. Make sure you have your water, your non-perishable foods, and stay tuned to this page as I will keep bringing updates every single day.